So here's the data we will be using for this demonstration. I copied and pasted manually the logs from my Strava app for the month of August 2020. I practiced 3 main activities during those weeks: kayaking, cycling, and walking. As you can see on this spreadsheet, there are 24 different entries. So it wasn't too long to input the data manually, but generally we will try to use readily formatted data from a CSV file or from a website which is already structured. So we want a structured data set as much as possible. In this case, I had to build it from scratch. So if we take line 2, for instance, because the first row includes or contains my column titles, so the actual first row with data is the second line on this data set in this spreadsheet. So on August 1st, I did 7 kilometers of kayaking. Took me 2 hours, and I was in Ottawa, Ontario. If we go further down, you can see that I did quite a few activities while in Georgian Bay Islands National Park. I kayaked quite a bit. We also took a 16-kilometer walk, and so on. So right away, you can think about some ways in which we could visualize this data set. What I will do with you is that I will show you how to turn this into a pie chart highlighting the number of kilometers, so the distance I did using each mode of transportation. A quick and easy way to do a basic data analysis using Excel or Google Sheets is to use a pivot table. So I'll click on the pivot table here, which I already made. And we can actually see the information much more clearly. So we only have 3 rows with information. We actually have 4 rows, but 3 main rows. So 1 each for cycling, kayaking, and walking, and then 2 columns. So we have the sum, SUM, that's total. So the total distance for each of those activities, and then the total duration, so sum of duration. And I will teach you later on this semester how to create pivot tables. But what's important here is that we can reach 2 main conclusions. I did 128 kilometers cycling, kayaking, walking during the month of August, and it took me a little under 22 hours. What we will use for the next step, which is to visualize the data, will be this column here. I'm interested in the total distance, cycling, kayaking, and walking. So to do so, we can simply copy and paste the first 4 rows, so I need my title row and then the 3 different rows with my activities, and simply the first column. Again, I will teach you in the coming weeks how to prepare a data set for visualization, but because we are dealing with a limited number of entry points here, we can simply copy and paste it into Datawrapper. Datawrapper offers you 3 main options when it comes to data visualization. You can create a new chart, a new map, or a new table. In our case, we will create a new chart. So we'll click on Chart. You now have 4 different tabs: Upload Data, Check and Describe, Visualize, Publish, and Embed. So we'll start by pasting the data, but we have different options. So we can copy and paste a data table, which I just did from Google Sheets. You can upload an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV, separated values. You can import a Google spreadsheet. So we could put a link to my Google spreadsheet. However, it's a bit more complex in our situation since I didn't clean up the data set per se. So I just copy what we need and I will paste it, and you can link to an external data set. In this case, I will simply paste my data. It looks a little bit messy, but don't worry. Those spaces here are actually recognized by Datawrapper. So we'll click on Proceed, which will lead us to Check and Describe. So my two columns look clean. I'll click on B here, and it says that the column type is auto number. It's correct. I could manually tell the system that those are indeed numbers. So we'll do so. Perfect. It's a pretty clean data set. We'll see in the coming weeks how to visualize much more complex data sets, but we'll stick to this one for right now. I'll click on proceed. Datawrapper now offers me a variety of options. I've got a lines chart. In my case, I want to show the total distance I did cycling, kayaking, walking back in August, and I want to show how much of that was cycling, kayaking, or walking. So a pie chart sounds about right. So I'll click on it, and the system will generate a pie chart. I can then customize it. So I will click on refine, and I could change the color scheme, but I kind of liked it as it was, so we'll go back to it. You can highlight some labels, choose a color key, grouping, and so on. We'll look at those advanced options later on. You can then annotate your visualization, so I can add a title, a description, some notes. The title will go at the very top. The description will go right below the title. The notes go at the very bottom. The data source and the link to the data source, which is a good practice. If you have a publicly available data set, add the link. It is a matter of transparency towards your readers. And the byline, so this section here, data source, link to data source, and the byline will go at the very bottom in this particular situation, and we could highlight some elements. So I will fill out the information. And voila, the boxes are filled. I've got my title, total distance by activity, a description, my pie chart, the total distance. So that's the title, that's the description, total distance, that's the notes box. Then I have my byline, and then the source, Strava, and a link to my profile, my user profile, so someone could fact check my work if they had any doubt regarding my visualization. So that's done. Under design, you can switch or change the language. So in this case, I am using standard English, but let's say that you are working with a data set in Italian or French or Cantonese or Dutch. You can choose the language so that Datawrapper will properly visualize your data. So I'll click on publish. Now, that's one limitation with the free version. With the paid for version, we could remove the created with Datawrapper type thing, or I think it stays there, but we could add a logo. And another limitation is that we can publish the chart, we can download it as a PNG, but if we were to use the paid for version, which is pretty pricey, we would have other options in terms of export formats and whatnot. But in this situation, in this case, we'll just click on publish chart. It's publishing it now. I've got a URL to the full screen version, to the normal size version. I can copy the embed code as a responsive iframe or a simple iframe. I recommend the responsive iframe. Responsive iframe means that it will adapt to the width of your screen. So if someone is looking at your graph on a 4K monitor, it will take the full width of the monitor. If someone is looking at your chart on a smartphone, it will be much smaller. So the responsive iframe is pretty useful. And you can also download your chart as a PNG.